They got the Pilot and Mount Comfort open again, and it's a trip. Yes, it's true. The Pilot and Mount Comfort is open, and somehow they found a way to make it worse. Remember in the old one, you'd all park around the outside and you had one single row on the inside. Well, they turned everything sideways and made like 2 rows and then parked a couple on the outsides. And what happens when you park this way instead of one row the long ways is you create curbs. And everybody stacks up in there, and they actually made it tighter and worse. And I don't understand how you could have taken a dump, put a beautiful new building on it, and made it worse. But they did. 1 out of 5. Anyhow, I've been working nights, and I haven't really had much of a chance to do videos. I've been working a lot. At about midnight, 1 in the morning to, when I get shut down, 1 in the afternoon or so. But I got thinking about all the dumb and dangerous things I've seen companies do, and a lot of things that they still continue to do. I don't understand why. I know why they're happening, but I don't understand why people think a lot of this stuff is a good idea. And things from the way they're setting their trucks up to the way they allow drivers to do e-logs to just all sorts of, routing and pay and stuff like that. Stuff that's so counterproductive, and some stuff that's even dangerous. And I'll address the dangerous stuff first, and then we'll just go on to the counterproductive stuff. And the stuff that's dangerous, we're going to start with the cruise control. Managed to get over here to, you can't really see it, but we're in Portage, Wisconsin right now. I managed to escape Indianapolis somewhat successfully. But the cruise control, and one of the problems that we've always had is these guys want guys to use cruise control. What they really need to do is have the cruise on 65, the foot on 68, but they reverse it. And what they're doing is creating a problem that you should never do. And in fact, that's one of the things you should be taught in driving school. And I know nobody's taught anything in driving school anymore except how to pass the test, but that's a complete other video. The cruise control is never to be used as an accelerator. It's dangerous. Guys get used to flicking it with their hand, and they forget the foot brakes there. So, I know why they do that, because they want guys to use the cruise, you get better mileage. But here's the thing. I discovered that if guys were actually to set the cruise on 65 and use the 68 to get around and then go back to 65, when you're not bumping the governor, you're actually getting better fuel mileage. So if you're going for fuel mileage on a governed truck, drop it to 64 and let it fluctuate between 64 and 65. Because what ends up happening is it hits the governor, it unwinds itself, and it has to wind itself back. And all these new efficiency trucks right now, like this one, this thing will unwind and it'll drop 5 miles an hour. And it's when a lot of times when you think these guys are lollygagging, they're just not paying attention to the cruise. The way that these efficiency programs, yeah, we're getting better mileage, but it's very counterproductive and it's slowing down the interstate. So but when you get guys that are using the cruise as an accelerator, it's very dangerous, because they're going passing lanes on 2-lane and trying to use the cruise to pass. And it's just, you should never do that. You're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble, and things like this cause accidents. I'm not big on governed trucks, but I know why they do it. That's another video. Let's go on to the next thing. One of the things that's heavily discouraged is split sleepers. Nobody knows how to run a split anymore. A split can be your best friend. A split will get you out of a lot of trouble. And a properly run split sleeper, 2 and 8 or a 3 and a 7, man, you can really use that to your advantage some days and cover some ground. But I've run into more and more guys who say their companies absolutely forbid them to do it. They don't want them to do it. They don't like them to do it. And they don't do it. So if they just run out, they just run out. And sometimes a split can really be the make it or break it point. So if you spent 3 or 4 hours unloading, they just want you to run out your clock and then take a break. But if you take a 7-hour break after 3 hours, you do got enough time to make it. You can get there on time. You might have to sit another 3 hours the next day, but at least you made your load. Get a little rest, and you know, it's used properly. It's a powerful tool in this business, and they're not allowing people to use the tools that they're giving them, which comes back to, let's go, personal conveyance now. I'll be the first one to admit personal conveyance is a widely misused tool. Used properly, it'll really help out. Used improperly, you get yourself in a lot of trouble. Trust me on that. A lot of companies are not giving guys personal conveyance. They're taking it out of the computers. They're not allowing guys to use it. So any movement that truck, even some of the owner-operators, you're just done. You're not allowed to use it. Personal conveyance is a real powerful tool to really help you maximize your day. Also helps you maximize your break. Say like you get to where you're going and they're not going to be ready for 2 or 3 hours, but you can't park there. You can personal conveyance over to the truck stop, sit there, personal conveyance back. As long as you note it properly and follow the guidelines. And the guidelines are so diluted right now that I'm not going to go over those, but they're pretty self-explanatory. They're not there to further the load, and they're not there to... They're basically there to do personal business and get you back and forth to the customer without starting your clock, providing you've already been to the customer once. We had a big row with this a while back, and they kept changing it, and I don't think anybody really still knows what's going on with that. But a lot of companies are taking personal conveyance out, and I think that's a bad thing. I know why they don't want guys to abuse it, but guys are going to abuse a logbook. You give them a leash, they're going to run it out. So you've got a bunch of people micromanaging a bunch of unmanageable people, and it always gets interesting. That's what I've always said about trucking. They're trying to micromanage the unmanageable. It's worked out well. One of the things that I've really never liked about a lot of these bigger companies is the pay structure. I understand, they have incentives. But the problem is that when you're force dispatched, the incentive may never come because they don't want to pay you any more than they have to. So if you're getting 55, 60 cents a mile, but you can have a 4 to 5 cents more a mile bump as long as you do X amount of miles and this and that and the other thing, it is a big incentive to, do that. Here's the problem. When you're forced dispatch, you're kind of at their mercy. You're either going to get it or you're not. And it all depends on that person on the other end of the phone. So I really don't like those incentives just because I don't think they're fair. Pay the guy a set wage and be done with it. That way the guy knows and what he's getting at the end of the week, and if he wants miles, give him miles, but don't sit there and hold things over his head like the incentive to work more, when in reality, they don't have a choice whether they're going to work more or not. They sit around at the company's pleasure. That's the thing that I've never understood, They have all these incentives and all these bonuses. Like the biggest scam right now is the fuel bonus. I'll explain. Now, I'm not going to say people don't get fuel bonuses, because they do. I've gotten them. As a company driver, we all kind of have. But part of the problem that I have with the fuel bonus is I've always thought it was rigged. I've never quite figured it out. They want you to drive slow and slow down, and I know guys at other companies that were driving 61 and 62 miles an hour in order to get that bonus. And some of those trucks they were driving, they were bumping 9 miles a gallon, and they're getting it. And I'm like, good for you guys. But their fuel bonus is mediocre at best. When I was at my last company for, it was 4 months. No, it was 4.5 months. It was 6 weeks in the third quarter, and the whole fourth quarter, I had the lowest idle time of the entire company. Lowest idle time, 0.0%, with 5 total minutes of idle time. When all was said and done, I got about a $250 bonus. I thought that kind of sucked. The next quarter, I had a 34% idle time and got $400. I still to this day have not figured out that. If I'd known it was going to screw me like that, I would have just idled, honestly. But I wanted to be a company guy, and I wanted to see if I could get the bonus. I didn't get the bonus. So, stuff like that, that experience with me is not the only time I've heard that. It's just, these companies offer a lot of these incentives, but how they pay out, sometimes it's a mystery. Well, I think this guy's in for some heartbreak here soon. I don't think I'm ever going to get this to quit leaking. Stop here in St. Joe to do my brake, and notice something dripping. I have fought that tank, and I don't know what to do now, so I guess we'll just have to replace that tank. Why not? We're replacing everything else, it seems, lately. We're finishing up a burn right now, so alright, I think we're done. So I was busy sitting there talking about pay. Some of the things, like with the last company I worked for, when they were doing mileage plus the national average of the fuel surcharge, a lot of these things are designed to benefit the company. Now, I'm not anti-company. We need these guys. We need a place to work. Sometimes we need places like this to get started. We got to build experience somewhere. But then when you start really looking into it, that's why people don't stay, in a lot of these companies. It's all about recruiting and not about retention. The training and the retention aspect of a lot of these companies is just flat dismal. We've talked about this before. But when companies are paying you a flat rate and then the surcharge, get out. I'm not going to tell you, I can't tell you what I'm making because every load is different, but I get a very good percentage, and I agreed to the company that I wouldn't talk about stuff like this. But even with the cheap freight, 2 years ago I've been here how many years? Well, let's just say the first year I was here, I can talk about that. I was averaging $1.78 a mile. Doesn't sound a lot, but that's all of the miles. So a lot of the freight was cheap, but a lot of the freight paid good. And when you're averaging that, we can go, 75 cents either way. And then with the fuel surcharge, you can add a lot to it. We were getting a quarter per mile for the fuel surcharge. And then when I really added it up, I was only getting 40 to 50% of it. They were keeping literally half of the surcharge. And then when you figured out what these loads were actually paying, I'm getting 27 to 35% of the load. So you have to be very careful about your pay. And when they start doing things like, oh, it's all about, we pay all the miles, we pay your tanks, we pay you this, we pay you that, we pay you this. It's better to do it, well, I've talked about this before, but pay is a very real thing. But we also need to talk about something I touched on, and that's retention. Too many of these companies these days have a mindset of truck drivers are a dime a dozen. And now all of a sudden they can't find any. And then you look and see that their turnover rate is literally, what was my last company? I think the lowest I saw was at 125%. So I've seen guys that basically for every 3, they have to hire 3 drivers to cover the one they lost, hoping that they're going to last 6 months. That's not a joke. What happens is that all the truck drivers and everybody that really understood the business retired and they walked out of the business and they left it, a lot of people, they hired people that knew the work. And this is nothing against these people, but they weren't drivers. They don't understand people. They don't understand that there are actual human beings on the other side of that computer screen. They don't email each other in the office. They don't talk to each other. They'll sit back to each other and send emails without turning around. They'll call each other on the phone. I mean, it's ridiculous. So retention has become a very big problem. And they're more interested in the recruiting. But I really, truly believe, and this is just because of the atmosphere, there's no such thing as an open door policy in most of these companies anymore. They say it, but half the time you have to call them on the phone or meet them at a window, or you just can't go in. So we're really not real to these people. It's completely impersonal. In fact, I remember a guy telling me about one company whose dispatch was completely in town. There was no way you could get to it in a truck. You never saw them. And truthfully, I was at my last company 9 years, and there's quite a few dispatchers. I have no idea what they look like. I have no idea who the load planners were. I mean, good grief, I only saw the owner of the company twice. So, that's food for thought. One of the things that I don't like that a lot of companies do, I understand why they do it, is the routing. They're going to pay you short miles, but they're going to want you to run practical. There's a lot of companies out there that want you to run the short miles too. That's why you see a lot of guys on the 2 lanes and falling off the side of hills. Because they're following their GPS, which they shouldn't be doing, because that's a car GPS most likely. Or lately, Google Earth. Guys, don't drive your truck using Google Earth. The only thing Google Earth should ever be used for in a truck is to figure out time and distance and maybe zoom in on a particular customer. Or find a phone number to that particular customer. But they'll send you the routing and the fueling, and like I told you about, they take the personality out of it. So when they fill up the fueling and they want you to do 40 gallons here and 30 gallons here and 20 gallons here and fill up here, the reason they're doing that is because they're actually trying to use the computer to satisfy their obligation for fuel tax. It's completely ineffective. But the other problem is these people that do this do not check their work. Sometimes when they have you going out there, they will have you 30 to 40 miles out of route to save a nickel. And it doesn't make sense. So you have to kind of get a little bit of perspective about that, because it gets real ridiculous. All sorts of chaos getting ready to happen here. So basically what I'm saying is you couple the fueling with the routing and all that, it becomes very impractical. They want you to follow it implicitly. They want you to follow the fueling implicitly. A lot of companies will shut the fuel cards off and you have to get it where they tell you. Kind of get that to a point. But they're just cutting their own throat. You know, you get 6 one way, half a dozen the other. There's no happy medium here. And instead of trying to just like I talked about, they're trying to manage the unmanageable. They fail to realize that these are actual people out here in these trucks. We're just dots on a computer screen to be manipulated. Go do this, go do this, go do this. It all comes to you on a computer. You never talk to anybody. A lot of guys like that. I do not. I'm going to irritate these people as much as they irritate me. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. The long and the short is, it's on both ends. We've tried to turn trucking into complete unskilled labor, which they have. And in doing so, you get what you get. You get unskilled labor on both ends. These people went to college for finance or degree, or they understand dispatching, or they've got something, they went to school that's useful for their job, but there's no real practical application to it, and they don't understand what they're doing. It's very cut and dry and sterile. And then you get the driver on the other end who, well, basically, he's brand new. He doesn't know what he's doing, and you get that. It's cutting both ways, and you get what you get, really. I'm trying to find a way to put this. They've ran the professionalism out of it on both ends and turned it into real unskilled labor all the way around. This is a very technical job. It doesn't seem like it, but truck driving is a very technical job. There's a lot to it. It's very tiring. We don't just sit out here sitting out here and driving and dealing with these people on the road. Today I was done. If they would have told me we don't have nothing till Monday, I would have just said, I'm turning my phone off, I'll talk to you Monday, and hung up. I woke up feeling good, and then people happened. It's a very stressful job a lot of times, and we have enough to deal with the general public on top of dealing with other drivers. I dealt with a couple of those today. It was like, dude, just let me go. And I don't get it, but the professionals have been run out, and it has become exactly what they said it was, unskilled labor. So where do we go from here? I don't know. I've been talking to a couple of other drivers and a couple of other YouTubes about advocacy and this and that and the other thing. I haven't brought this up before, but that's maybe something for another video. But as the companies are trying to manage what's going on, they seem to be making it worse. They need to take a break, take a step back, reevaluate everything, work on a little bit of retention, and then kind of just start adjusting the lines rather than blurring them. That's all I'm saying. But we also need to start working on retention. And as I've said before, it's not about pay at this point. It's gone so far beyond pay that you could pay these guys all the money in the world and it's not going to help. So, where do we go from here? Well, I guess time will tell. So, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, guys. I wish I had a way to end this on a better note, but we just need to keep working at it. So I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. See you next video.